Hey everybody, welcome back to Movies and TV Shows on the Ball. My name is Steve.
And I'm Jay.
And today we are going to be doing a conclusion to our pilot episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So Jay, before we start, what happened, let's tell the audience what happened right before this part 2.
Yeah, so the part 1 ended with some vampires taking some of their friends. I think it was Xander, Willow, and Jesse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then Buffy went out to save them, and she got into a tussle in the graveyard,
mausoleum
with the vampires.
And
so it sort of ended in a cliffhanger when Buffy was fighting the sort of mini boss of the vampires for this episode, Luke. I think was his name.
Yes,
yeah.
Luke. And then what I kind of it said so that's when it said to be continued, and now we continue. And Luke was basically Luke was a guy that got bitten by a vampire.
No, that was Jesse.
Jesse got bitten by a vampire. Luke was
sort of like the henchman guy.
Henchman guy. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Sort of like the sort of the monster of the week.
Monster of the week. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we we're introduced to kind of they're in the graveyard. They're underground the graveyard.
Yeah. Yeah. So this episode's a lot of it sort of like, just still following the same character, sort of introducing sort of like their team chemistry.
Yeah, and you have Buffy.
Right.
And
you have Willow and Giles.
And Giles. And Willow and Giles
are doing like research.
And they kind of have like a central hub. Like I've kind of noticed listening to some other podcasts that they say that every show kind of needs like a central
right.
just kind of for people to kind of show up, and for this show they spend time in the library.
Right.
And so, I've kind of noticed that the library is pretty much going to be sort of their sort of place of meeting. So, we've got the command center. Yeah, pretty much. What I kind of noticed is, like, you kind of notice that Giles is sort of the ringmaster of all this stuff. And I think Willow, who I always kind of thought was actually Buffy's sister, for some reason, but I think Michelle Trachtenberg's character in like season 3 or 4 or whatever shows up as Buffy's like sister or something. Yeah, I've just kind of this show's been out for almost 15 years, so
spoiler, Steven.
No, this show's been out since.
I was just joking. Yeah. Joking.
Oh yeah, but And what I kind of liked about what they did is like, so they're in the they're in the graveyard. I'm sorry, my mind's kind of like I'm trying to.
Yeah, so one of their friends, Jesse, gets captured by the vampires.
Right.
Yeah, so they have to devise like a rescue plan.
And Jesse, so that's pretty much the basis of the episode.
Right.
And so they basically go back to the library, and they pretty much kind of come up with a plan to rescue Jesse.
Right.
What do you think of this episode?
I liked it. I sort of wish we had time to sort of watch them back to back.
Yeah, it did feel kind of like...
Because it was pretty much like a straight continuation.
Yeah, it did feel like
there was a lot less of like, last
exposition.
Time on, it didn't really like, tell you, like a lot of shows, they'll have like last time on...
Well, and I'm guessing probably what it is, who knows, maybe what it was is that this show was actually a 2-parter.
It probably premiered.
It probably was like a 2-hour premiere.
Right.
And probably had like... Because I felt like watching it on DVD, I felt like, okay, I remember we watched the first, like, I kind of felt like it would, and to get stuff recorded anyway, it would have probably taken us too long to kind of watch both of them. And we've already done the first episode. Yeah. I would, but anyway, so what I kind of thought that, but after kind of, it's basically setting the team up.
Right.
Pretty much.
I think in this one, we actually get to see, I think in the first episode it was sort of like a shadow mystery man. We get officially introduced to Angel.
And Angel is basically the guardian, the guardian angel, if you will. and he's played by David. I can't remember his last name, but he's the guy from Bone. No, it's not Hasselhoff. It's I can't remember. David. Something starts with a B, but he plays in Bones recently.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever saw that TV series.
No, I never watched Bones.
But like, he and I mean, I think he's kind of the heartthrob of the show. You know,
Okay.
well, and I'm guessing there's like a because I looked at I've got the Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 2, and it's like Angel and Buffy probably will get in a relationship somewhere between the.
Not Xander.
Well, I mean the cover pretty much states that Buffy and Angel.
Yeah. Okay.
There's kind of that's kind of thing. But I'm wondering, like, once the show gets closer, once it gets closer, we get to see that Xander's pretty much jealous because we kind of noticed, like, even in the first episode.
Right.
Remember, Xander's on the skateboard and like looks at Buffy and like so you know, has that.
There's a lot less of it in this movie.
Yeah, this episode. Yeah, and I think
there's a lot more of him being like, you know, like sad he's not, you know, capable of fighting the vampires.
But I think there's also that masculine. There is that sense of him being, I think, man wanting to protect his woman, kind of thing.
She's the Slayer.
But she's the Slayer. But that's the thing, but that's the thing I like about Buffy is that she's a character that happens to be a badass woman, but there's never this sexism overlay that I see in a lot of TV now, where it's just like, oh, I'm a woman, I'm a girl boss, I can do she's a character that happens to be female. So I mean, I liked how this episode kind of explained a lot more. It made me feel pretty much like, okay, I kind of understand.
Yeah, sort of introducing sort of the big bad, like the master guy.
Which is named, he looks like Nosferatu.
Yeah, I think they just call him the master.
The master, yeah, and he kind of has, and like he has his minions that are basically like, I guess, high school students that were bitten.
I guess so.
Because it was a guy with there's a girl that we saw in the first episode for part 1.
At the very intro.
At the very intro, she's in the intro in the credits.
Right.
And then there's the other guy who's got that necklace on his neck. And what's interesting about the vampires in this show is like I like how they have a facial.
Yeah, they can sort of morph a bit.
Kind of thing, and what. So this episode pretty much what the first part kind of gave you kind of like, okay, an intro and just kind of I'm still kind of vibing to it. It did feel like a show. I think if I watched 1, 2 together, I would feel a little bit more concentrated on this episode. Right. But I was kind of like, wait a minute, hold on, like they don't really give you kind of a back,
right
after previous episode number 1,
right.
Kind of thing. But Jay, what was your sort of thoughts on it?
I liked it. I don't know. I can see why the show is like super popular.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I liked how Giles, he kind of felt like he's sophisticatedly intellectual, like intellectual, a sophisticated character, and then like watching the part 1. It felt like he was kind of a creeper a little bit, or it gave me that kind of weird vibe.
Yeah.
What was your? But I like. So let's kind of continue the plot.
Yeah. I guess it was like when they go to rescue Jesse, they find out he's already been turned into a vampire,
right. And so they have to fight off Jesse.
Right, and then they escape out.
And he's basically. And then back to the house.
And then they start learning more about the harvest.
The harvest, which is
like where they're going to have Luke is going to be the vessel for the master. So he's going to when he eats people, he's going to make the main bad guy stronger.
Oh, okay, yeah, that
so
makes sense.
He's sort of locked in like a prison.
Okay, and then what I also like is that, and what I like about it is that. But then you've got Xander, or there is that sense of like well, like I'm gonna talk about was it Christina, who's the
the mean girl.
the mean girl?
I can't remember her name.
Okay, so the mean girl, but like see in the at the beginning of the pilot,
right?
The mean girl was sort of like very much like. Yeah, I kind of said, I think when we were watching it, she's going to be sort of like trying to figure out Buffy's secret proper, as the show goes on.
Right.
I thought, I liked what they did with, I thought it did pretty, I thought it was a lot better looking part 2 than part 1. Part 1 felt really rushed, and kind of the way it was shot was a little bit,
okay.
Right.
I did like how they had their computer class.
Yes.
That was that's a fancy high school.
Yeah, for like
teaching
1990.
like programming.
Yeah, for 1997.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts? Like, here's my thought. I kind of felt like this was one of the. I felt like it's a really good start to the show.
Right.
I liked how this one kind of explained more. I liked how Giles and Buffy knew each. It kind of makes more sense now that Giles and Buffy knew each other. Because it felt like part 1 he was kind of a mystery guy.
Yeah.
And now part 2 he's very much like a character.
Right.
But I don't. But so let's kind of continue them. So where do we leave off?
Okay, trying to remember. So, like, they don't save Xander, but then Giles and Willow are doing research, and they find about the harvest. And like, oh no, it's going to be the end of the world.
Yeah, and there's sort of, and I think that's what that's like the kind of where the plot. I think as the show goes on. That's sort of that'll be sort of the plot they're going to try to get closer and closer to Doomsday,
right? Pretty
much. I thought that it felt like a really strong part 2 to a decent part 1.
Yeah.
I think part 1 was just sort of like exposition, tried to figure out. Right. How to grab you.
Yeah, they introduced a bunch of characters.
And and this one we kind of like, okay, now we kind of get to play with the characters.
Right, actually have a story.
Trying
to think else. I'm sort of, I don't know, excited because now, like, it's like not just vampires. They'll be, facing whatever demons.
Yeah,
so that was more like range, and like, I hope it's, vampires again.
And that gives it enough time for it to be.
Makes it more interesting.
More interesting. And I mean, like, when Blade, because I was going to do this as a Blade versus Buffy thing.
Right.
Because vampires, Blade is all about vampires,
Right.
And
I guess we haven't done Blade 2, but Blade 2 has, like, super vampires.
Well, yeah. But Buffy, and I like how Buffy says there's going to be more to it, which makes it more interesting as the series goes on, because you need sort of a monster of the week, because you have to have the character,
I mean, it keeps it from getting stale.
Stale, yeah, exactly. So Giles is basically, and then you've got Andrew Keegan's character, who is kind of part of the vampires.
Which one was Andrew Keegan?
He was he wasn't Andrew Keegan, it was somebody else, but he was he was that kind of. He was at the party.
Was that the student that got their friend? Yeah, Jesse. Yeah.
Jesse, that was Jesse. Yeah. Jesse's friend.
Yeah.
I think
it was Xander's friend.
Xander's friend.
Yeah.
Xander, yeah, and Jesse, who's Xander's friend, he gets bitten.
Right.
By one of the vampire girls.
Yeah,
right.
A bit, yeah, and then he gets fully turned off screen.
Yeah,
and then Xander's struggling with like, oh, I can't kill my friend. He's like, trying to talk him like, you're still in there.
Yeah. And then, and what I like about it is that Buffy is kind of a badass, but she's not. What I like about her is she's not super. She's a character first, versus.
And I like how she sort of has like the Spider-Man quip somewhat, like
Yeah,
sort of like the
quips,
confidence,
but it's not the confidence quips.
but it's not like
but
in
it's
a bad
not.
way.
Well, it's not overly. It's not overly used. You know. It's not like.
Yeah, there's still
Lights out. I mean, there is that thing, but you got to have a style. Schwarzenegger, like I've said before, Schwarzenegger, he can say those puns, and they work just because he's just got that charisma.
Right.
And I think that's the same thing. Is like she's a badass character that happens to be female. And that's what got me was that she was very much like, because when I wanted to do this Blade versus Buffy thing. I was kind of looking at it, well, how do you kind of lore? I mean, I'm more focused on the lore and how the Buffy kind of difference between Blade, Because if you remember, and I think I said this already on the recording, but he says, Blade says in the thing, it's like, forget what you heard in the movies, the books and the movies, steaks, garlic, crosses in holy water. But this one, she has she wears a cross on her neck, like as a necklace, and she carries stakes, but they're wooden stakes.
Right.
And we're also looking at it as the show, and we didn't even see the movie that it's based on.
I saw it. I did like the movie.
Yeah. Did you kind of release any? Did you kind of see any? Or has it been so long since you've seen it?
It's been. I remember it. I liked it. I think they actually sort of referenced the movie in the show, like where she says, like the high school she transfers from.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's referencing.
Is that the main high school that she was at?
I think
the
so.
First one.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I didn't know.
Like, where she they blow up the gymnasium. I can't remember the end. I think that's sort of what.
That's kind of.
I think it's where they have like their final showdown there.
In the movie.
I think so, but I'd have to.
Kind of watch it again. Yeah. Well, we're just jumping into it and just kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked it. I feel like there's like you kind of see that there's. I bet you anything when the show keeps going, Angel's gonna show up and Buffy and Angel are having a thing.
Yeah, probably.
And Xander, there's gonna be a Xander, Angel,
like
Buffy, love triangle or something. Because you look at the cover for Buffy season 2. Right. Angel's looking at Buffy and Buffy's like,
okay. I have played the Buffy board game, and I think Willow might turn into like a wizard or something,
or a witch, or the warlock.
Or just get magic powers. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting. I like this episode. I think if I would have watched the first one and the second one back to back, it would feel more cohesive.
Yeah.
And I wish I kind of knew that before I came in.
Gotcha. Well, trying to remember. Well, judging by some of the other sort of like teen dramas I think you've covered, based on like sort of the first episode, what do you think? How does Buffy stand out?
It kind of reminds me of Smallville's first episode.
Okay.
But I kind of but it did because Smallville also came from WB. It came out in 2001. This came out in '97. The show Buffy was still on the air when so it did have that kind of same feel to it. I think it made. I feel like after doing the One Tree Hill show or doing the first 2 episodes of One Tree Hill, I felt like One Tree Hill had more of a cohesive. It felt like you're kind of following the story along.
Right.
This one I felt a little bit like I kind of have to watch episode 1 to kind of understand episode 2 in this one, just because I'm so new to it. But it's a good half of the first one.
Right.
I mean, it's.
Yeah, and I guess that episode does have me curious, well, what's going to be the next monster?
Yeah.
What's it going to?
It does that, and I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it's a pretty good start. These first 2 episodes are a pretty good start.
Right.
But we'll see what's gonna happen. So Jay, what would you? I feel like I give it a 6.
Okay.
But I think it'd probably be a 8 or 9 if I watched both of them back to back just to get the whole cohesive thing.
Right.
So that's our look at Buffy episode 2, part 2.
Right.
Coming up next
I
is
think we're gonna do John Wick chapter
John
2.
Wick chapter
Yeah,
2.
I think we're gonna try to get through those since John Wick 4 is coming out soon.
So take a look. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Bye.